Okay, is that done? Okay. Chair, when it comes to rights, hello? Oh, okay. When it comes to rights, it is of a nature to ensure that rights are being granted when there is an absolute necessity to ensure an individual that is granted with, within these rights are able to not only enjoy but to ensure that they can protect themselves from it. We think that these rights are being utilized in a manner where if you are being oppressed or at a circumstances that risks your life, you are able to use these sort of rights since it acts as a self-defense. We think that, for example, your rights of freedom of speech, for example, is somewhat of a necessity and whatnot. We think that the reason why the motion is being proposed is in status quo, there is an unequal playing field when it actually comes into bearing arms, which are weapons, for example. Who do we see in status quo that are bearing arms? Mostly are male individuals, and even if we see female bearing in, arms, for example, they're unlikely to take these sort of measures, and we'll explain reasons of why. We think the reason why we're going to now start to stop giving out the grantment of right to bear arms to absolutely everyone and just to exclusive sort of groups is because the majority of those who actually bear arms are male individuals. And these sort of narrative puts fear into the groups who are actually vulnerable or being threatened in the sort of arms being used. Before that, let's characterize who are these non-male individuals and why do we think that it's justified for us to narrow this debate down to them. We think that non-male individuals are those who are not identified as male, i.e. your transgenders or your females. So for example, they pose a constant threat every day due to heavy stigmatization due to exploitation because they're weak, for example, and whatnot. Even if we think that they're strong, when they do not bear arms, but the ones who are using arms are like, for example, males who are willing to hurt them at that moment, we think that is absolutely harmful. We think that these are the sort of groups are very vulnerable to, for example, rape or being sexually harassed or bullied to the point of near death because of these sort of narratives. So we think that when the necessity of having arms, which can be characterized as pistols or knife, being taken or the rights are being granted to these sort of individuals, we think that the majority male individual that would likely hurt these sort of vulnerable groups will then take two steps back to actually hurt them now since they bear arms, right? We think that is justified because, like we said, that male individuals are just statistically like unlikely are going to hurt these sort of vulnerable groups due to heavy stigmatization onto them feeling that they are superior and whatnot. What are the check and balances under OG that we think is right? We think that when you grant the enforcement or when you grant this sort of rights to only those who are who are only non-male individuals, the government will now enforce this sort of regulation to ensure that there's a certain limit as to how an individual uses this sort of right? We think that if there is a misuse of arms, it would obviously be mentioned into the way of them using it. That means if there is no sort of provocation by an individual, or if there's no urgency for them to feel threatened from their life, then this individual may not take arms. It then will constitute to illegality. We think these are the sort of narrow down and characterization we're going to bring to today's debate. Before that, sure.
Under your world, what would a provocation look like? If you're arguing these individuals suffer due to microaggressions, wouldn't that technically also be something you have to defend them using guns to like defend themselves against these things?
I think I've characterized it very well of what sort of crimes and provocation that is going to happen. For example, if you're going to be raped and you don't have the capability to actually fight back, or you're going to be sexually harassed that you don't have the capability to fight back or would lead to rape and all sorts of things, or bullied to the point of death. These are the sort of provocation and crimes that are happening in status quo. And we think that is very much justified for these vulnerable individuals to take arms and have these sort of rights. And we've already given you the check and balances of what sort of regulation and up to what point may they take up that arm. And if they do not adhere to this sort of regulations, then it's obviously illegal, right? Why do we also think status quo is not enough and that op has to prove to us? The first is that existing measures are insufficient and only covers when it happens before or after. For example, where police have patrol duties or parole in that sort of area. But we think it's insufficient because at that very moment when that woman or a non-male individual is being dragged into a secluded area, these are the sort of crime places that police sometimes may not identify. And that very moment when you have the right to take up arms without having the superior individual to use it upon you, we think that is the advantage that you have to take and you can counterattack, right? We think that is sufficient. But the most important thing that OG would bring is that it's the state's responsibility to actually acknowledge that these sort of rights go being utilized to individuals that actually really need it in comparison to people who actually abuse this sort of arms. We think that it's harmful because when these vulnerable groups are taken out or are revoked of their own rights to protect themselves because they are being, for example, overshadowed or overpowered by individuals that are very much not only just strong, but people who, on top of being strong or on top of overpowering these individuals, they also have like arms to hurt these individuals. We think that's like a double hurting thing that's going to happen, that's going to hurt the individual even more. Yes. So at the moment where we think it is the state's responsibility, when especially like police officers can always be there to ensure that all these sort of things won't happen, this is when this exclusivity of rights that OG has proposed would actually kick in. OP has to prove to us what sort of world and why is status quo still sufficient to ensure that these sort of vulnerable groups of people who are non-male individuals would actually be protected at the end of the day when they're still scared, fearless due to stigmatization that is happening, right? So I think it's so much more preferable to live in a world where we know that number one, you have a check and balances, but second, that these sort of rights are entitled to people who actually needs it the most in comparison to those who doesn't. We think that the urgency should be revoked back. We think that the urgency for these vulnerable groups people should start to kick in instead of focusing on other groups of male individuals that uses this incoherently. We think that also it is like fair at a point because we tell you that there's a check and balances where enforcements and regulation by the government will be taken into consideration. So best case scenario, we actually protect these non-male individual groups that are constantly posing death threats to the point where they actually need this, but they don't have all the tools because they're fearful of their lives to do so. And we think that at that point of unequal playing field, OP has to prove to us why is that okay and a preferable world to live in, proud to propose.
I thank the Prime Minister for this speech. I will now invite the Leader of Opposition.
Give me a few minutes. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Opening population because they initially said that they want freedom of choice, they want no double standards, and they want mutual respect between genders. But at the same breath, with saying that they want freedom of choice, they don't want anyone have the right to bear arms, which is totally contradictory. But secondly, they also say that we on side opening government are increasing the amount of violence by proposing that the most likely group of people that will be the victim should have weapon. So we don't see that their assumption about our stance is correct simply because taking away guns from men when men are the most likely rapists and murderers in today's society can increase amount of violence in any way. But secondly, when they say about men facing the same thing, we think that due to the floodgates that would happen if we grant the right to bear arms to male, we think that is justified. But secondly, even if that is not acceptable in this debate, we think that the fact that when you revoke the right to bear arms from males, the males must give weapon back to the government since their possessions are recorded, and when they are buy guns and there is a lot of precepts and whatnot, which means that the government will ensure that men who bought weapon and men who want to buy weapon will give up their weapon and will not have the ability to buy weapon. So in the end of the day, even if there are certain men who still have weapon, the percentage of rapists or murderers who have weapon will be significantly reduced, which means that more life of women and also men will be safe, and in the end of the day, more people will be protected. So site opening obligation need to be engaged, need to engage with what I have just said. I have just said that in status quo, because we are not debating in the theoretical world where freedom of choice is the preferable kind of way. We are not living in utopia where all people have mutual respect with each other simply because they have the freedom of choice. No, we are living in a world where the most number of individuals who become rapists and murderers are individuals who identify themselves as male. So Amy has told you about this problem of unequal playing field, and the mechanization that we propose and the regulation that we propose is that those individuals who are more likely to be a victim in the current society should bear arms. So even if such opposition want to argue about, there might be careless women, Karen with being irresponsible, shooting people who disagree with them. So such things are being regulated within our law. So such thing will be significantly mitigated through regulations, trainings, and whatnot. And the same punishment will be imposed upon them if they murder someone without just cause. However, even if such opposition want to argue that is particularly important, we think that that issue is not as important as giving arms, giving the immediate measures that innocent trans women who are murdered in the alley or young girl being raped by a group of men can rely on. Because in status quo, the only measures that we have is preventive measures, such as police go from neighboring streets and whatnot, and also the measures that are taken after the situation happens, such as court system, punishment, and whatnot. But there is the absence of measures or things that these victims can rely on at the moment of that crime happening. So when we only grant the right to bear arms to only non-male individuals, i.e. the groups who are the most likely becoming the victims in the end of the day, it means that they have something to rely on at that particular circumstance. And the measures that they can rely on is significantly more beneficial and more helpful in our world, since in their world, those rapists, those prospective murderers and rapists also have arms, also have pistols. So in the end of the day, we need to be comparative, where in our world, it is proven that not only that it is principally justified, but it is also produce tangible benefits to the society in which more life is protected and more dignity can be preserved. So what opposition need to do, especially in particular with opening opposition, is not only to talk about theoretical or principle analysis on why why equal playing field is important, all genders facing violence should be able to defend themselves. No, they should be debating in a context where there is a specific group of people who are at constant risk on a daily basis, and they should not only debating on the general terms and whatnot. Yeah. Is there any PI?
PY from
So we acknowledge that to an extent, you get self-defense when women are able to bear arms. But my question is, how is this any exclusive? Or if it is exclusive, what is the scale to a difference with carrying a penknife or carrying pepper spray that could allow you to also escape that particular harm?
Because carrying pepper spray are not as helpful as carrying a pistol in a life-threatening situation, especially when your victims are facing multiple perpetrators at the same time. And even if that is the case, then we think that if carrying a pepper spray is justified, then we think pistols and guns are also justified in the same manner, because it also helps those victims to prevent themselves. So in the end of the day, we think that such immediate measures should be taken, considering the statistics that shows that this specific group of people are at a position where their life and their dignity are being threatened at a daily basis. For that, we are proud to propose. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for their speech. I would now invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Am I audible?
Yes.
We live in the male dominant society. Those male dominance is rooted the physical advantage of the male. The male is the more powerful than the non-male and the female. And those physical difference is an influence in the social existence and the mental feeling, and it promotes gender inequalities. And because of those influence, the organic change is difficult to achieve, and it is a long way to go. So to change those social circumstances and the narratives in the study that we propose this motion. Okay, I'm going to talk about two things in my speech. The firstly, what's happening after taking this proposal, especially in the society levels, how the social change is to take place and how the people's mind will be changed. And we believe that it is a reversing effect. The male dominance is a mitigate after taking this plan. And the second way, I'll explain why the reversing effect is important. And before that, I have some clarification and the rebuttals. Okay, firstly, in the opening debate, the OG did a good job. The why those armament is important in the individual levels by exemplifying the case of the domestic violence and the case of the rapes. But the missing here is that what kind of social change is happened after taking this proposal. And we believe that this motion brings us the social change and the male dominance that will be minimized. Male dominance will be minimized after taking this proposal. So this is a clear extension coming from the Croatian government. Then let me move to the debates against opening oppositions. Okay, firstly, always talk about the freedom of choices, but three responses here. The firstly, those freedom of choice is of course not absolute right. It should be limited if it harms the others. And actually, there is tons of examples: the sexual abuse, the rape, and domestic violence, and sexual harassment, etc. And those freedom of choice is never be justifiable. And the second way, even male don't armament that he has a physically powerful and it is powerful enough that to oppress the female. So if the female armament is a self-defense for the female. And finally, in the historical context, the female is oppressed by the male dominance, male violence. So if the female armament, it is a balance, and also it makes a deterrence power to the male violence. No, thank you. And and also they said in the PY the microaggressions. But in the status quo, the microaggression is a take place. But why is that? Because the male is a dominant in the society, so male look down the non-male. Therefore, the microaggression is a take place. But it means that if social change is a take place, the social narrative has been changed. That those microaggressions will also be disappears. And also, they said the check and balance and the black market, but we believe that it is the both not mutually exclusive. The firstly, the check and balance, but now the male buy the weapons and protects their families, and after taking this part, female buy weapons and protects their families, and actually it is same situation. And also, we are happy to introduce the background check if the female by the weapons. And also the black market. The black market is already take place, and actually it is not unique and not mutually exclusive. And the point here is that the male cannot armament the public after taking this motion. So it is a strong trigger that want to promote social change. Okay, I take POI.
Yes, point from open. So just a quick question. How does microaggression not happen in your side house for the vulnerable 80-year-old grandfather that I mentioned earlier?
Because I'll explain later. Because this motion, the female armament, that changed the social narratives between the male and the female and the minority and the majority. Okay, firstly, how the social change will take place. Okay, the first historical context. The why male has a dominant powers because the male is physically powerful. Historically, the male doing the hunting and shooting animals and fighting against enemies. Therefore, male dominance is justifiable for the societies. Secondly, but what's happened after taking this proposal? The male never armament and the non-male armament, and it means that without non-males non-males armies, the male cannot protect by themselves. That this is a reversing effect of the historical context. So male have to rely on the non-male, the male have to rely on the female, and in these circumstances, the no-male have to protect the males. So it is a balancing out the male dominancy, and those male dominancy is mitigated. And thirdly, how the people's mind change. So male have to rely on the non-male. The male dominance is mitigatable. So in the historical context, the female rely on the male, therefore male-dominated society. But it is the same logic. After taking this proposal, male rely on the non-male and non-male-dominated society. So people change their mind, and those male dominance will be the non-male dominance. But of course, we don't intend that those non-male dominance, no, thank you. Those non-male dominance that last forever, because it is a just temporal step that to destroy and mitigate and balance out the male dominant societies. Finally, the why those reversing effect of the why those social change is important. Firstly, let me back to the context. So male dominant society. So after taking this pose, in the male dominant society, the organic change take place to some extent, but it is a long way to go. The reason is simple. The male dominate the important position in the societies. The second, but thanks to the reversing effect, the non-male can protect males. So male is a rely on the non-male, so minority protect majorities. Those reversing effects can balance us, and the violence and discrimination between minority and majority and the female and the males. And without those reversing effects, that this is our counterfactual. Without those reversing effects, the social change never take place, because male never abandon the dominance in the society. So non-male armament is the only way to mitigate the male dominance in the society and to promote the gender equality. And for those reasons, we strongly propose and support this motion. Thank you.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Is it okay if I use the toilet for a quick second? I'm really sorry.
Yeah, sure.
All right, thank you so much. So sorry.
Thanking the member of government for their speech. Member of opposition, whenever you are ready.
The member of opposition is the one who went to toilet.
Yeah, that's fine. Not an issue.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you. All right, I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, I think this debate throughout three houses has been extremely nuanced. They assume action equals consequence without the contextualization of what the feminist movement is currently using as a strategy to advocate for structural change, how this policy will materialize in terms of legal court cases where it was used and you trying to prove it in self-defense, for example, and how would that trickle down towards the overall legal and political capital you have to enforce overall holistic and universal changes for women on the ground. I think it was bogged down opening some grandfather examples, which I really don't know why it's important. Government just assume this means you get to reduce male domination because apparently males don't have to rely on females to protect themselves. I don't know why. I think the first thing I'll do in this debate is to prove firstly that their extent of benefit is one that's extremely marginal in nature. Rape probably still occurs on both sides of the house to an extent. But B, I'll prove why on our side of the house, this policy actively shapes social narratives surrounding sexist structures and rape to actively disadvantage women. It cripples your political capital and legal capital for change. More specifically, one key contention here is I wanted to point point out the status quo of how we deal with rape cases anyway. Women are oftentimes already victim blamed for rape. For example, you are wearing something that's really bad. Or in the cases of court cases, a lot of times it's very hard for people to be prosecuted for rape in the first place because the burden of proof is extremely high. And there's also things like battered women syndrome that actively disadvantage women in court. Specifically note that the context Gov set up is that these harms are so prevalent that literally things forbidden by law are actively being carried out on a daily basis. We would question the extent of your benefit, specifically when it's trickled down and it's co-opted by sexist media in terms of how it's portrayed towards people and how that generates people's emotions up to actively fight against your movement. We think that's the key contention here. None of the houses in this debate actually argue why structural change is far more likely. Firstly, mitigating their benefits. I would like to note the benefits of self-defense is one that's extremely marginal, and they really never prove the scales to how it's effective. OG tells, oh, pepper spray is insufficient. We don't really know why. I think pepper spray can probably work in the sense that you spray the person, you run away. But most importantly, the important nuance here is that you are able to control the narrative in which you have. The nuance here is that you're able to use things like the victim card, which generates a lot of empathy and legal authority for you to get changed, because laws are supposed to universally protect a lot of individuals, more than extension. But note, Gov never proved why the benefits were exclusive in nature. But secondly, I would like to prove why Gov's policy doesn't extend to the guarantee all women have access to guns. Note, the context is set up as women are oftentimes very poor, that the men are dominating patriarchal structures, that they have very strong positions of power. I have no idea why that means women on the ground on the outside of the house will suddenly have the resources to probably buy guns and buy ammunition in the first place, especially if there's mass discrimination against women. The extent of it is that clearly these things are going to be infiltrating the social structures, such as women are probably disenfranchised in the workplace, have far lower wages, and could oftentimes not even have jobs in households. Patriarchies probably manifest in men being breadwinners and the sole source of income. They probably exist husband training, which usually prevents women from opting to get guns in the first place. Probably a lot of women on their specific context of such pernicious and extreme harms probably won't have access to the guns. But even if it's not in those contexts, let's talk it in a very generous fashion of like a more moderate world. We would say even in a more moderate world, women have natural incentives to probably not want to bear weapons, right? Because weapons are inherently dangerous, and the fear of misuse is one that's extremely pernicious, specifically if children and you have a family in the household. We would say those fears often amounts to a lot of women not opting to have weapons in the first place, which is why pepper spray and penknives are things which are generally more common in the status quo, specifically has been used to combat the rape rates in South Africa, for example, because it's something they can easily control and something they don't need to always be fearful of using in the very first place, specifically when it's weaponized by right-wing media, which I'm going to prove now. Here's the extension. It cripples all existing legal and political leverage that the feminist movement has garnered. The legal leverage, such as the law, is literally meant to universally protect all citizens. That is, it should do more to protect women and punish rapists. And that's the narrative that feminist movements have been advocating for throughout the past few centuries on our side of the house. Note, government's policy creates a clear shift here, is that the burden of the law and its ability to protect women is now shifted to placing the burden on women to act in self-defense. That already a victim blaming happens for women, as in the things you wear probably led to your rape. You propose that more individuals on your side of the house would probably say, you got raped because you didn't carry a weapon, don't punish me for it. You would say these kinds of narratives are probably ones in which are inherently more prevalent. If Gov says victims should defend themselves, even when all their analysis is that women are like victims and non-male individuals are so heavily disadvantaged beyond just physical attributes, we propose that the ways in which it materializes in court is one that's structurally harmful in this as well. What are the impacts of it, right? Firstly, why is it that in courts it will happen in a very harmful way towards women? No, the burden of proof of self-defense is extremely high, and the vast majority of cases doesn't even get cleared. But the first preemption note here is that Gov has to defend the usage of the weapon in any instance, and that has to have a signaling effect towards all women on the ground. Because if they argue, oh no guys, it's just because we have a gun in our pockets and men wouldn't want to attack us anymore, I think if this happens for a long time, men will clearly understand, especially in your patriarchal context, that it's an empty threat, and they will continue all the kinds of harms you want to have on your side of the house, and which means this debate has to assume that the usage of guns is one that's guaranteed on both sides of the house. The debate thereby becomes how that narrative is going to be shaped overall. Firstly, on the burden of proof, we would say the burden of proof of self-defense is extremely hard to prove generally, right? You have to prove that the threat was extremely imminent, and even in the status quo, when the threat has already happened, a lot of rapists still get away by using a lot of factors such as the psychological factors of like literally assassinating your character as a whole, right? The fear, the panic, the strong emotional charges that they want to talk about on their side of the house will probably be weaponized in court to prove that the decision to use that weapon probably wasn't the most necessary decision. There could have probably been more alternatives, Or even in some cases could probably say maybe that rape wasn't imminent, that men was just trying to come closer, and it was that fear of the women that actively led to the usage of that weapon. This means that in legal precedents, you actively create a world where a lot of women are going to be prosecuted by your racist and sexist structures on your side of the house and put into jail for the usage of those weapons against men. This is regardless of whether the fact that the rape was going to happen or not, because it surrounds the narrative that men and patriarchal structures are able to cling on to it. This means that you cripple all your outcomes on your side of the house because it becomes harder for you to gain leverage for your movement. The patriarchy is enforced because they can literally enforce narratives such as don't fight against me because look at what this woman did with a gun, and now the woman is in jail. You probably don't want to do that more on your side of the house. What is our counterfactual? Not opening, closing opposition will not take the burden to prove a perfect world, but so long as our world is one that's better than the one that God proposes and we are proving an improving Mac right now, we already win this debate. What's an improving Mac? Women right now are focusing on empathy and generally sympathy-heavy characters in order to gain strong forms of change, such as using things like the victim card in rape, for example. The lean-in movement literally saying don't rape individuals because you could have raped your sister, you could have raped your mother, or you raping person sets a presence allows for other individuals to threaten the rape of your mother and your sister, for example. And those are active narratives that are actively being used right now to garner change on a strong political spectrum that spans beyond divides in terms of ideology as a whole. A lot of moderate and even sexist individuals are being swayed by the narrative of women being empathetic and women being able to use emotions to their benefit. On your side of the house, when you literally portray violence as the way women opt to solve issues, and you have a world where legal presence is one that actively disadvantages women and strengthens the patriarchy, we would say that's a world that's far less preferable for structural change. Only on side closing opposition, you get a clear roadmap to universal protection for all women in the long run. Very proud to oppose.
I thank the member of opposition for their speech. I will now invite the government whip.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. Thank you, speakers. So, Mr. Speakers, so we believe that self-defense is fundamentally important, that we want to protect anyone. But unfortunately, what's happening, the status quo is that the only woman is marginalized for defending themselves, speakers. So already my partner told you that some area misogynistic, such as Pakistan. So, in that area, the legal protection for women is not happening. Even if women are raped, even if women are killed, so no one protects, the government give any protection for those persons. This is fundamentally unjust, speakers. So in that sense, that what we want to propose is this kind of this disproportionate power balance is significantly problematic. Therefore, we believe that we want to increase the power women. Otherwise, the women cannot protect themselves and rather being attacked by man and at the expense of the women, the society consists. This situation never ever justified anymore, speakers. So this is the contribution we on the clothing garment side have done the several aspects. Firstly, physically the women are more weak persons, and this is really problematic for defending themselves. Second of all, the culturally and history, the misogynic area is likely to be defend themselves. The woman is more victimized, the domestic violence or raped for sexual pleasure for themselves. This kind of things should be never increased. Therefore, we are standing up on our side. So before moving on to this clash, okay, let's engage to the closing opposition subset. Okay, closing opposition provides the extension. This was universal protection is justified. Okay, we agree that the universal protection should be justified, but this is not applied to women at all in the especially misogynic areas. This is no thank you. It's unjustifiable. In that sense that we want to encourage this disproportionate should be removed. Next is he talk about jails. The woman is more treated in the court, and if woman kill the man, the more severely punished. So, speaker, that might be the case. But even if that is the case, we believe our side is more justified because our side can protect help the woman more and more. Because if they go to court and women have to be punished severely. But even if that is the case, they can go to the jail, and they are going to at least they can live. So in that cases, the public can notice that those people are treated unequally. The court is unfair in that country. Other international organization is going to criticize such areas. This is far more good. Yes, in that sense that this is good. Plus, under our side, the incentive for a man to attack woman is going to less decrease, because if you attack women, the woman can revenge and attack back. That this kind of the message is more likely to be happen. Then that this kind of the violence is going to decrease. Therefore, we are proposing our side. So therefore, this is the reason their opposition case is not justifiable. Speakers. So let's moving on to the second class point. Yes, please.
So maybe it's true that you get one instance of a woman being able to act in self-defense, but if you consider individuals going to go to jail, aren't you likely going to have a chilling effect when your sexist narratives are able to say, don't ever fight against me because you only get worse outcomes for yourself on your side of the house?
Of course, this is integrated, my extensions. Okay, let's moving on to the extension I told you here, this page, because so my partner told you here is that physically the woman is so marginalized and weak position, and physically this is a bad thing. Then, but this kind of thing is so make the woman to be more monopolized by the man. So this is bad. Plus the next read, my partner told you the culturally and historically the certain area is clearly do not provide any kind of protection or legal protection at all, as the closing team already told you that. So in that sense, rather our case is more justifiable. So what we told you here is to contextualize the debate or this motion should be stand in the specific cases is that the misogynic area, like Pakistan, no thank you, who cannot protect themselves. So that is how the vigilantism, no thank you, vigilantism are make up in the Pakistan and in certain areas. This is bad. So we say that this kind of no thank you, this kind of the situation is going to more make the women more victimized and cannot be life. This is bad. Therefore, we are standing up on our side. So lastly, the social recognition. So negative side again and again, no thank you, saying that this this kind of should be unjust because universal right should not be given to the not only men but also women. But we told you that the social recognition should be fixed because the current framework is significantly unjustifiable and unfair, disproportionately favor and prioritize man. This is bad. But on the other side, the equally can that this kind of disproportion is going to disappear. This is fine. Therefore, we are happy to stand in our side. This is a contribution from the closing team on this letter. Lastly, go. Please.
If you're arguing that the context is that there are no laws against the people who are actively raping women, where do you get the political capital to enforce a universal law that all women should be able to bear arms and men cannot?
Again and again, physically, I told you that if the physically cannot be attacked, the weapon or other kind of the thing, pistol or gun, should be encouraged. Then the man is going to decrease the incentive to attack. This is fine. Therefore, we are standing up for our side. Okay, speakers. Lastly, comparisons. So, which case is the better on our side or side? Their side. So, they are saying that without doing anything, the woman should be victimized or killed. We don't think so. At least maybe the women have to become murder or killing the other men. But without doing anything, being killed is far more better. We believe that if they want to survive, they can voice out and they can try to act the more equal situation. The woman is not the sacrifice or sexually exploited anymore. So we believe that this kind of the unjust is no longer justified. Structurally, we have to fix. This is the only case that we government side can do that. Other alternative or organic change is dead. So in that sense that we believe this situation should be justified. This kind of unique benefit can stand by the extension due to the government team. Therefore, we are happy to stand up for our case. Thank you.
I thank the government whip for their speech. I would now invite the opposition whip.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Chair, this entire debate, basically, the entire government bench argued that by granting these weapons or allowing a policy that grants only non-males as weapons, they immediately get immunity from rape and all forms of discrimination and harms caused by males toward them, right? In CO, we'll tell you why the failure of there to be a link between these two, and we'll tell you why it doesn't grant the benefits that Gov wants to push, and we'll tell you why it worsens all political capital, legal progress, and any societal change that feminists and civil rights movements wants to achieve. Right? Firstly, rebuttals. Let's deal with OG. Firstly, they said the state responsibility is to provide exclusive rights to protect these vulnerable individuals as their principle. Firstly, if this is true, then the state has to protect women. The state has to step up and take responsibility for citizens by maybe ensuring the legal process is completely foolproof and holds perpetrators accountable. Note, what OG is suggesting is different. They suggest that the state should leave women to defend themselves on their own. This is not state taking responsibility for women. This is state cutting their obligation down and leaving these women to fend for their own by assuming a role of self-defense. Secondly, they told us state accountability measures are insufficient. If it's true that the criminal justice system, is not reliable and the state is not going to want to protect women, that idea and narrative isn't going to change. That means there's no possibility for you to further any progress or further any change for women to gain any more exclusive rights, right? Let's deal with CG. First, the main thing that they said was male dominance will shift to non-male dominance. This is not true. The reason that males have dominance in the first place is because they assume that role, and then they assume political roles and legal roles that give them so much power, right? Understanding that this reactive and reactionist policy won't change because men still mostly have legal power in like CGS being judges, and they still have political power being in parliament, right? There's power. There will always be a power asymmetry that men can claim dominance over. Secondly, CG suddenly wants to debate in an extremely misogynistic state, an extremely lawless state. This is very convenient, but we'll still engage. Firstly, all states have laws to protect women from things like rape or discrimination. But even if that's not true, if the state really doesn't care about women, there was no way there could be enough political capital for this policy to be passed in the first place. That means women will be screwed over in both of those, right? Understanding that for main issue of this debate, why granting exclusively non-male individuals the right to bear arms is horrible. So I think this was largely unresponded to, right? Firstly, a large portion of women aren't going to get the opportunity to bear arms in the first place. We give you so much analysis. Firstly, we tell you many vulnerable non-males are locked out of purchasing arms. Firstly, maybe they're trapped in poverty cycle, or they live in a man-dominated household and they're fearful of patriarchy. They're unlikely going to step up and resist. These are vulnerable women who simply can't purchase weapons. Secondly, many women don't feel comfortable, and this was conceded by OG, right? Because OG said that a majority currently in US, a majority of arm bearers are men. That shows that women don't feel comfortable bearing arms, or women aren't likely going to purchase arms, maybe because they have impressionable children at home, or maybe they don't feel comfortable with violence. The conclusion of this piece of analysis is we tell you majority of non-male individuals aren't going to bear arms even in your world, right? And we told you this was unresponded. Therefore, what are the harms? Firstly, large extension and far worse scale of victim blaming. Understanding status quo, non-males are already being victim blamed for rape, right? People say it's their fault because they dressed like that, or they knew they had it coming because they're women. We acknowledge this harmful and toxic stigma happens in our world. But what's far worse comparative that occurs in their world? There's so much more victim blaming because now society assumes that all non-male individuals can easily access forms of self-defense, even though it's not true, because we told you that many non-males don't feel comfortable or don't have the opportunity to buy firearms. What happens when women or non-males do get assaulted? And we prove why this is likely, right? Because firstly, we prove that most non-males are going to be unarmed and have therefore the same level of self-defense as they do in our world. But secondly, we still tell you that men still have accessibility to guns, right? Through crime organizations, through black market, through illegal dealers. This is true because if it's true that criminals are mostly men, then they don't care about the law, they don't care about regulations. Means they're likely going to go through illegal paths to attain weapons in both cases, right? What happens then? when women and non-males do get assaulted, firstly, women will be blamed for the rape because people will say it's your fault. Why didn't you acquire firearms? Why didn't you utilize those firearms to protect yourself? And secondly, why this is worsened is because we told you that maybe privileged women and privileged non-males will have access to buy these guns. We tell you the most vulnerable sector of women and non-males, the ones who are trapped in poverty cycle, the ones who have a fearful of patriarchy and unwilling to step out of that cycle. We tell you unarmed women are going to be the most vulnerable, the ones you need to protect. But in your world, there'll be so much, they'll be ignored so much worse, right? Before I move on, are there any POIs? No. All right. Okay. So yeah. But even if we assume a context where everybody has guns, so we tell you there are mitigatory measures to reduce violence for men, right? We tell you there's a high barrier of entry, and tell you that you must show some document of identification, and there are records and traces to purchase these firearms, right? Secondly, what the CEOs aim in this debate? We don't have to prove how we further organic change. We just prove to you that this policy hinders progress and the only form of capital that feminist and civil rights movement has to further change, right? So the first way we tell you this hinders change is because the societal narrative will continue to adopt the rape culture and continue to victim blame and continue to blame women, right? The second thing we told you, it cripples legal leverage. We told you that the law and the criminal justice system is meant to hold perpetrators accountable and hold perpetrators to justice. So maybe in our world, criminal justice systems don't do this efficiently as it can, but in your world, it's so much worse because the CJS is so much more complacent in holding perpetrators to justice. Why? Firstly, because men get to claim the victim card, the point at which they are injured by bullets or like they've been shot by women, they are oftentimes get to play into sympathy of conservative judges and conservative juries, right? Secondly, you lose any empathy by judge and jury because currently we told you that through political any form of political capital amassed by feminist movements is through the fact they've been playing the empathy card. They've been playing the card why we've been discriminated so much. This changes in your world because in your world they are seen as radical, they are seen as violent, and we tell you this reverses any political capital and legal leverage your feminist movements have worked so hard to attain for. For all those reasons, now we've been prouder to oppose.
I thank the teams for the debate. Please do not leave this meeting. All of you are requested to post your speaking order in the chat.